I'll now turn it over to Gage to talk about the strategic plan. I guess we've got questions first, though.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. I did want to just pause for a few minutes before we move into the strategic plan and just see if there were any questions about the information we've covered at this point. I did see a couple of notes in the chat, and I appreciate the comments, Naomi and Karen, on the support of the connectivity. Karen's did kind of have an implied question there that there's hope that we could continue to support students in need for connectivity beyond COVID. And I'll have Erica jump in on this, but I know this is something that she and I actually had been discussing with some community members prior to COVID, are ways that we could maybe support some of those students in need with internet services. Because there is a lot of work, even when students are in a physical class, there's a lot of work done at home that internet connectivity can be important for, and students that can't afford it definitely are missing out on that aspect. And so we recognize the importance of that, and I think we'll continue to keep the conversation going with some of the community partners that help step in, like the Community Foundation was a key part of getting this effort together during the pandemic, and we'll continue those conversations with those partners going forward. And Erica, if you have anything to add to that, please jump in.
No, I would just agree that that's something that's been on our radar, and we're looking at options to, having a good, solid internet connection at home really levels the playing field for students. So we see that as something that's important to the community and would like to be able to come up with something that we can have on a longer term basis.
All right, got another good question in about did MPW place a moratorium on shutoffs during the pandemic, and were payment assistance programs offered? So Erica, I think that'd be another great question for you to take as well.
Sure, there was a moratorium on shutoffs during COVID, and there were numerous assistance programs that we helped communicate to customers in need. We are fortunate to work with Community Action here in Muscatine, and they received some additional funding through the state of Iowa, and it's a really good partnership. We met with some other community leaders later in the year and came up with some ideas to there's some really good collaboration going on between multiple nonprofit groups to help residents who need it. And we were brought into that conversation and able, from our conversations with customers and seeing the need that they have, help direct them to some of those community resources that they might not have otherwise been aware of.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I know there's been action at the state level that we supported that funnels money back through programs like LIHEAP that helps get money back to customers who are in need and behind on their utility bills to get some funds to help keep them keep their service on. And I'll just say that one of the things that we tracked during the pandemic for several months was our accounts receivable, on our retail services. So, were we seeing customers getting behind, and were those receivables piling up? And actually what we saw was they were pretty steady and continue to be steady at this time. So through the support at the state level, the local level, really done a great job in Iowa and Muscatine of ensuring that customers can maintain their utility services. Great question. Another question we have come in was, how do you see 5G impacting the city and your future plans? So again, Erica, I'll take a whack at this, and then you correct me what I get wrong here. So this is something that's been on our radar, obviously, for several years now, and tracking the progress and considering what the impact to our strategy might be. There are different types of 5G, even though some of the cell providers refer to it as 5G. There are different types, and they each have pros and cons. So for some of the really low frequency, high bandwidth 5G technologies, they require a lot more towers. So the tower density needs to increase significantly to get the kind of speeds that some of them talk about. We think it's a few years out before Muscatine would be targeted for that type of 5G technology. You might see 5G, but it won't be quite those highest bandwidth numbers that some of them have talked about. definitely a risk to our internet service, and something we need to keep an eye on. But again, as a municipal provider, our goal is always to just make sure that the community has the services that they need. And so as we track that, we're not worried about profits. We just need to make sure that our customers are connected and they have what they need for the utility services. So it's something that we're tracking and we're keeping an eye on. But we do think the fiber infrastructure is almost future-proof in terms of bandwidth capacity. Now, there are other parts of the system that need to be upgraded to increase bandwidth, but the fiber itself can handle a significant increase in bandwidth from where we're at even today. So we think having that infrastructure, that plant in the air, in the ground, is definitely a huge benefit for this community going forward.
I think the only thing that I might add to that, Gage, is that, we see MPW potentially being a backhaul provider for those cell companies in the future. And, with the density that a community like Muscatine has, I think it'd be some of the challenge will be, making that investment for a very large company to get a payback in a small community. That's why I agree with Gage when he says that it's probably several years out before they're going to go into areas where there's a lot more population density, where they can get that return on their investment much quicker than they could in a community the size of Muscatine. And that's really why the communications utility came into existence, because we're a smaller town. A town this size would be one of the later ones that the bigger companies would look at making the investments. And being a municipal utility, we're here to make sure that the community has state-of-the-art services. So that's why just 20 some years after getting into the business, we upgraded all of our infrastructure from the hybrid fiber coax to complete fiber to the home.
Thanks, Erica, and good question, Mike. It's time for maybe one more question. If somebody has one, to drop in the chat box. We will have probably a few minutes at the very end as well if something else comes up. If not, we will keep moving. And again, if you do have another one, feel free to drop it in that chat box. If we don't get to any questions at the end, we can certainly follow up with you after the fact as well.